Well, Stamberg, thank you for coming on the first episode of 2022. Very pumped to have you in, and it's been great getting to know you so far this year. What's it been like for the first couple weeks here at Gilman, and what are you doing on campus?
I am the new assistant in the upper school library, and just working on displays, helping prepare books to go on the shelves, shelving books, trying to get to know the students as they come in without being in their face like, hey, I'm the new guy, come and hang out in the library, but slowly getting a feel for the vibe here. And it's a good vibe.
Yeah, it is. It's I feel like in my classes so far this year that there's a really good energy to the beginning of the school year, and maybe that's because, you know, some guys are coming back from, I don't know, COVID. You know, we were at home for a couple of years, and now we're finally back into full swing. Last year we started the school year with masks on, so this is kind of the first fall where it's not all funky and strange and, you know, wearing masks all the time.
I think it's good. I feel very lucky that I came in at a point where not everyone is masked. There's still a few people, and I understand that do wear the mask, but to be in a new place where you can actually see full facial expressions and not have to guess how someone is reacting. And, you know, like I said, it's just lucky timing that I landed here when things are almost back to normal. I don't think they're quite yet back to normal because you still test every once in a while, and you still get a little, well, at least I do, get a little nervous. You know, what if you're positive? And so far, so good.
Yeah. Were you in New York? So you've been in New York pretty much your whole life?
Yeah, I grew up on Long Island, and for the last several years lived in Brooklyn and worked for the New York Public Library as a young adult librarian, the 53rd Street branch between 5th and 6th Avenue. So it's like Midtown Manhattan, a stone's throw from Times Square. So it's right across the street from the Museum of Modern Art. So we had people wandering in thinking that we were the museum because the space is just like open and inviting, and it was gorgeous. And I was there for 3 years. Before that, I was at a library on Long Island, my hometown library, commuting from Brooklyn to Long Island. And yeah, NYPL, I thought like that would be it. I would retire from there. I mean, that's the uppermost of the toppermost, you know, of libraries. And my girlfriend and I just decided that we wanted to pool our money and buy a place, and found that anything within commuting distance of New York City was beyond our financial means. And we didn't want to keep paying rent because rent was just going up and up and up. And we love Baltimore. We love Hampden. So we found a place here, and here I am.
Had you ever been to Baltimore before coming down here?
Yeah, we have friends that live down here in Hampden and Mount Washington, so we would visit a couple times a year. And every time we stayed here, we'd get an Airbnb. And my first question would always be, how close to Atomic Books is this Airbnb?
Atomic Books? I don't know if I've ever been there.
It's a great bookstore on Falls Road. It's they have an eclectic collection, something for everyone. It's unique. And there's also a bar in the back that's open a few hours a day. Yeah, I've only been to the bar part once, but the bookstore, it's like part independent bookstore, part comic book store. I think they may sell music there, but it's also where it's John Waters' favorite bookstore, so his fan mail goes there, so it doesn't have to go to his house. And there's such a close connection with him anytime he has a new book out, he does a signing there, and it's just a great place. So we live about 5 minutes from there.
Perfect.
So, yeah, and it's right near what they call the Ave, which is actually 36th Street. I still don't know the story behind that, why a street is called the Ave, but it is, and I accept it. So we're like walking distance from everything we would want to do, like on a weekend.
Great restaurants and some stores and some antique shops and charmery, right?
Plenty of places to take my hard-earned money. Yeah,
exactly. Love it. Yeah, that's the thing I feel like I've learned about Baltimore is that there are so many really cool hidden gems here that you almost have to talk to people who have explored and who are from here that know, like, I mean, I should know about Atomic Books. I'm an English teacher. I love bookstores, but I've been here for 4.5 years and never been there.
Yeah, definitely check it out. Yeah, like But the only thing is they don't have, it's not a huge store. It's not like a Barnes & Noble or a Borders. But before I, hit buy on Amazon, I'll go there and see if they have it or see if they can get it. And if they don't have it, they'll recommend, another place that might have it. But as a last resort, I'll just get it from Amazon or the library. But I don't know, if I'm looking for a book in the store, chances are I want it on my shelf. So
For sure. So what's like the origin story of how you got into librarian? Is it librarianship?
Yep, sure. Yeah, the
think
world of librariating.
The world of being a librarian. How did that begin for you?
It actually happened when I was on tour playing music, and it was a 5-star resort in Portugal that used to be a monastery, just the most beautiful place you could possibly imagine staying in. Had a room to myself, and it was after a show, and I started thinking of how I did not look forward to going home because it was another several weeks before the next tour. So I started seriously thinking about what kind of quote unquote real job I could get. And I narrowed it down to working in a museum or being an archivist, or being a librarian wasn't even at the top of the list. But for the jobs that I was interested in and could see myself waking up every day and not thinking, oh no, I have to go to work, which enough people do that, I don't have to add myself to that list. I ended up going to library school to work in an archive, to work with a special collection, maybe work at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame archives, something along those lines. So my focus was on archival studies in library school. And it turned out the first job I got out of school was as a young adult librarian in Queens. And I just loved working with the public. Like while I was in school, I had a job part-time working as a librarian trainee at a reference desk at the East Meadow Public Library. And just the different people coming in every day, no 2 days were the same. I was like, all right, I could probably do this for the rest of my life. It's just a matter of landing in a place that I loved working with or had a good vibe, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, so it seems like even before you became a librarian, you always loved the interactions with people who came in, like when you were first working at libraries.
Yeah.
Did you always love books?
Oh, my whole life, yeah. I mean, I would always go to the library and come out with a stack of books. I mean, starting, with Curious George or the Hardy Boys. And then when I was 10, I started reading biographies. I was 10 years old reading a book about Mick Jagger that was called, I read the title as Everybody's Lucifer, but it's Everybody's Lucifer. So I probably didn't understand half of what was in the book, but I was already, the Stones have been my favorite band since I was 9. So, reading books about them, reading Mad Magazine, I was just constantly reading. And my parents encouraged me to just read anything I was interested in as long as, I was reading. It helps with your vocabulary, regardless of what you're reading. So I loved going to the library. It was always part of the summer reading club. I loved filling out, putting stickers on each day, that I read a book or how many books I read, and then getting a prize, even if it was a little Frisbee, or you get a party at the end of the summer. It was just part of my upbringing. And, once I had a car, I realized you can go to any library in your system and check out a book or have it sent to your local branch. So I was like a library nerd before I even knew that I would end up being a librarian.
Man, that's awesome. It's crazy that some people are like you, some of my students I'm thinking about in English, they're reading on their own. They love to read. It's just a natural passion. And other students, they probably won't read a book. Even if it's mandatory and it's required for class, they'll do whatever it takes not to sit down and have to read the book. Some people just have it,
Yeah, I mean, I was always reading. Unfortunately, it wasn't always what I was supposed to be reading. So maybe I didn't have the best grades until I was in college. And then I looked back and thought, wow, I could have made, honor roll every semester if I was just reading X instead of Y. But I don't know, I still feel like I got a decent education.
Did you study, what did you study in college? Did you study English?
No, I studied philosophy and cultural anthropology.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, my goal was to go to law school and become an entertainment lawyer or someone defending artists who were getting ripped off by, bad contracts or whatever. And then when I went to law school for 1 year before I dropped out. I went to New York Law School in downtown Manhattan. And while I was there, I was playing drums, playing in local bands, and I thought, if I put this much effort into playing music, I could probably get somewhere with it. My goal wasn't to be famous. My goal wasn't to, be a rock star or whatever, but just to make a living or just have that experience of playing music or touring. So dropped out of law school, focused on playing music, took acting classes, got work part-time, like just doing extra work or doing off-Broadway theater while playing in a band. And then eventually I got a call that CJ Ramone, the former bass player for the Ramones, was looking for a drummer for one show in Portugal, of all places. So that was like the first of 3 or 4 trips to Portugal, which is the same country where I made the decision to, change course. But that first show in Portugal, he says, by the way, this is your audition to be my new drummer. So then I passed, and for the next 4 years, anytime he toured, I was the drummer.
Wow.
Yeah.
For people who don't know, who were the Ramones, and what was it like getting called up by the Ramones to go to Portugal, and that kind of first experience for you, like joining that band or trying out for that band?
Well, the Ramones are a punk band from Queens, New York that formed in 1974. And their first album inspired bands like the Sex Pistols and the Clash to form bands, and they were kind of like the forerunners of the whole punk rock scene. And so you had the original 4 with Joey on vocals, Tommy on drums, Johnny on guitar, and Dee Dee on bass. And when Dee Dee retired in 1989, they auditioned and picked CJ to be the new bass player, and he was with them for 7 years until they retired. So the Ramones, they had their big hit was Blitzkrieg Bop, which everyone knows is the Hey Ho, Let's Go song. You'll hear it at baseball, at any sporting event. You'll hear that at some point when they're trying to rally the fans behind it, the home team.
Mm-hmm.
So when I got the call for him that he needed a drummer for one show, I was more of like, I was playing in a punk rock band at the time, but I was more of a classic rock kind of guy. So I said, all right, let me call my punk rock drummer friends and see if I could find someone that can do it. And no one could do it or was available. So I said, all right, I'll give it a shot. I learned 30 songs in a week, rehearsed with him and his guitar player, Daniel Ray, who had also written and produced for the Ramones, and got the job.
How'd you get connected with them? How did they know to call you up?
We had a mutual friend that I went to college with, and I had played in a band called Rat Bastard. And we used to play shows when CJ wasn't touring, and right after the Ramones, he had a band called Los Gusanos. And we were on the bill with him a few times. So our mutual friend suggested me, and he remembered me from the Rat Bastard days, and he said, all right, we'll give him a shot.
Man, that's awesome.
Yeah, I was white-knuckling it the whole time, though. Before the show in Portugal, he just looked at me. He's like, man, you don't look too good. He's like, don't worry. I felt like that my first show with the Ramones. He said, the first show is going to be rough. The next few shows are going to be rough, but eventually you'll get it.
Wow. And was everything located in Portugal? Is that where you toured for the most part, or did you go all over?
Oh, no. That show in Portugal was a one-off for like an arts festival, and then we would do tours of South America. Like the first time I went to South America, it was about a week long, half in Argentina, half in Brazil. So that was pretty amazing. Wow. Then we did another tour of Chile and Argentina with the Misfits, so another amazing tour. And then we did a U.S. tour that was a month long. We do Canada for like a week, Italy for a week. We went to Italy 3 times, and we hit almost every country in South America. Like over the course of 4 years, all over South America. I was always hoping to go to Japan and Australia, but he did that. He went back there after I left the band. But, I'm happy for him.
Man. Yeah, I always wonder what it's like to be on tour for bands. Does it get, I'm sure it gets exhausting, but I'm sure it's incredibly fun and like such a cool bonding experience for the band.
He's the greatest boss I've ever had. Hands down. The man, we're still in contact to this day. He's like my big brother. And he would always say a bad day on the road is better than a good day in the office. and I never saw him lose his cool. The closest to him losing it was we were in, where was it? We were in Venezuela trying to get to Panama, and the airport was just complete chaos. Security walking around with machine guns, and any American we walked into, they immediately recognized that we were Americans because we were probably talking louder than anyone else in English. And they would say, "Oh my God, I've been here for a week trying to get home. You guys are never going to get back to the States." And we were like, "Whoa, we're just trying to go to, we're going to Panama, play a show in Panama City tonight." And once we realized that there was no way we were getting on our flight, it was because we were there 4 hours early, and they said, "Oh, you're not here early enough." Just bags of cash were exchanged throughout the afternoon, and we eventually made it to Peru, where we were supposed to play 3 nights later. We got on a flight to Peru, but before that happened, the closest that CJ ever came to losing it was like he said, "These guys are hungry. I'm starving. If we don't at least get a bag of chips within a half hour, I'm going to lose it." And that was his tone. That's his angry. That was him yelling. So
it's just a warning, you know.
Yeah, so
he knows himself.
Yeah. He's an ex-Marine. Well, he was a Marine, so is a Marine.
Wow.
So yeah, but he kept his cool. So I learned so much from him just being around him.
Yeah. What was the coolest show you ever did?
Probably a festival in Argentina in front of like 30,000 people, where just everyone, chanting "Hey ho, let's go" at the same time.
Yeah.
Just unbelievable. And they're like huge stage, giant screen behind me, and every once in a while, out of the corner of my eye, I'd catch me on the screen, and it was so hard not to just laugh because it's just ridiculous.
That's
but
amazing.
I mean, the crowds there were incredible. So yeah, that playing in front of that many people outdoors, probably the best memory.
So, before you joined the Ramones,
well, it was CJ Ramone. The Ramones retired in '96, so it was just CJ Ramone touring solo.
Okay, so you and CJ. How did you when did you first get introduced into drumming and music, and how did that become a passion for you?
Growing up, my mom was always playing Elvis records or the Beatles. My father was a professional guitar player till I was about 4 or 5 years old. So I grew up with my dad walking around the house with an unplugged Fender Stratocaster, strap, just playing. Mm-hmm. So the music was just always there. And my parents got me a Muppet drum set when I was like 3 or 4. And I still have the bass drum head from that. I found it when we just sold my parents' house, and I found it in the basement. So now it's in Hampden, just the bass drum head. It's pretty cool.
Wow.
So when I could keep a beat, even when I couldn't keep a beat, my dad would jam with me, which he had the patience of a saint just to play music with me. He showed me how to play a beat, and when I was in high school, we played in bands together, so music was just always there.
Yeah, it's in the blood.
Yeah.
I feel like, that's maybe one of the reasons I didn't really get into music growing up. I mean, I like listening to music, and I love concerts, and my parents love concerts, but I never played an instrument really because no one in my family really plays an instrument. I feel like
it's not too late.
It's not too late for sure. I'd love to learn maybe the drums or guitar would be cool. Never learned an instrument.
I think guitar is good because you can just pick one. You could have one here. I mean, there's 2 in the lobby at Gilman, thanks to Henry.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. So speaking of that, when I first walked in for my first interview and I spied those 2 guitars, I was like, all right, this place isn't that bad.
That was the sign.
Yeah.
Cool. What were some other tour stories or experiences that you had in those? How long was that? What was the time period?
It was
that
almost
you were with CJ.
No, let's see. Maybe 2009 to 2013, something like that, roughly 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
I just remember my other favorite memory is the morning of my 40th birthday, because I'm old. We played 2 shows we left for Nashville to play 2 shows in Nashville, and at the time we didn't have a guitar player leading up to that, so I get a call from CJ saying, "Oh, I found a guitar player. It's Des Cadena, who was touring with the Misfits at the time, but Des Cadena is a founding member of Black Flag. He was one of the original singers. Then he wanted to move on and just do rhythm guitar, and that was when Henry Rollins joined Black Flag. So Des has a long history in music that I like. And so when I found out that Des Cadena was going to be the guitar player for the two shows the weekend of my 40th birthday in Nashville, I was just like, wow, I can retire after this, and I never have to do another show ever again. So when I picked up Des at the train station on Long Island to take him to rehearsal, he looks at my arm and he's like, "Oh, you got the Black Flag bars?" And I was like, kind of like, "Yeah, yes, sir. Yes, I did." And he said, "Well, I was the first one to get them in Black Flag." And all I wanted to do was like a fist bump of like bump tattoos, but I was like, just, "Well, that's cool. Yeah, we should probably go now." So I was just over the moon in punk rock heaven. And then on the way there, I, regained whatever composure I could and said, "Yeah, I was talking with CJ. He said it would be okay if it's okay with you for us to do a Black Flag song. I'd love to do Rise Above." And he's like, "Well, we'll do it in rehearsal and see how it sounds." And I was like, "All right, no pressure." Just playing it with the guy who helped write and record it on the original Black Flag album. So we did it.
Man, that's cool.
Yeah. So that is my video antidepressant. Anytime I'm feeling down or if I'm feeling good, I just go on YouTube and pull that up and I'm in heaven.
Wow. Where was that played?
It was in Nashville. I forget the name of the club, but I've seen it I think there was a show called Nashville, and they used that venue a lot. And anytime I would see it on TV, I recognize it because it has a wall full of gold records behind where the drummer's sitting. So someplace in Nashville, like off the beaten path. It's not on it's not in a touristy area. So we played there, and then we did a show for Mars Right Records at the Hard Rock in Nashville, and that's on, the main touristy drag.
I'd love to check that out. I'd love to pull that up on YouTube.
Man, just look up Des Cadena, CJ Ramone, Michael Stamberg, Rise Above, and boom, there it is.
Wow. Cool.
Yeah, I'm proud of that one.
Love it. All right, so another one of your interests or passions is, well, you've got a whole list. I was trying to prepare for the conversation here. You've got gardening, and then you told me you're a huge runner.
Yeah. Well, literally. I mean, I'm 50 pounds heavier than I was when I ran my last marathon. So I'm a huger runner than I care to be. But yeah, running is my first love. The only sport that that and BMX are the two sports that are.
When did you get into running? In school or early on or after school? I
mean, that's another thing that my father got me into, because when the whole running boom happened, he started running with a friend of his, and they would just run around the park, and then when they were done, they'd smoke a cigarette. And when his friend started beating him in these short runs, he decided to quit smoking. So running got my dad to quit smoking, which made me happy, made my older sister happy. And when he started going to races in the late 70s, because again, I'm old, he would bring me along, and I would do the fun run. I'd do the mile fun run, the mile and a half fun run. Then when I was 11 or 12, I would start doing the 5K or the 5-mile race. We had my father was a coach of a CYO track team, the Catholic Youth Organization, even though I wasn't Catholic. And the only thing my dad practiced was guitar. He was the coach. It didn't matter, religion, whatever. So that was my first track team. Then junior high, joined the track team, continued going to races. High school, I did cross country, winter track, spring track 4 years in a row. Did my first half marathon my freshman year. It's still my personal record. Now we're in 37 minutes. Thank you. And just continued running. I mean, when I was a kid, my dad ran the New York Marathon a couple of times, and it just inspired me to that. The New York Marathon, the Boston Marathon, that was the World Series for me. That was the Super Bowl. I mean, other kids had posters of, Major League Baseball players, football players. I had pictures of Bill Rogers and Steve Prefontaine on my wall. Bill Rogers won New York Marathon 4 times and won the Boston Marathon 4 times. Steve Prefontaine was a phenomenal middle distance runner from Oregon, and he was the first person in running to champion the rights for runners to make money and still be able to participate in the Olympics. So he really went to bat for a lot of people.
When did you run your first marathon? What was it like training for your first marathon?
It was interesting because I trained, we were on a U.S. tour, so every day different city, different state.
Oh, you were training while you
Yeah.
were. Wow.
Yeah, so a month of my training for the 2011 New York Marathon, which was my last full marathon, was on the U.S. tour. So that included running in Arizona when it was like 110, just running in mountains in like North Carolina, just running through the French Quarter in New Orleans. And what was great about that is not only did it keep me from, having one beer too many after a show, it just kept me on a good sleep schedule because I'd be exhausted, wouldn't stay up too late. It wasn't like a huge partying scene. I mean, that was another thing with CJ. I think he did enough of that on the road with the Ramones. Like, we would just go back to the hotel and, hang out, have a few drinks, whatever. We'd always travel with books. We'd always be talking about. So books are always just in my life. So that's another, part of touring life, was just bringing books, audio books to listen to in the van, or just books to read in the airport. It's a lot of hurry up and wait. So training in 2011 for the New York Marathon, it was different city every day. It was amazing. Yeah.
What was it like? Like, what was that experience like? Like, first marathon, was it everything you expected? Was it like, how hard was it on your body? Were you used to it? Was it like what was that?
My first marathon.
Like?
My first marathon was running the first mile of the New York Marathon. You start in Staten Island, you run over the Verrazano Bridge. First mile is uphill. You don't feel it. You're just floating the whole way. And I just had like a smile on my face. I was so happy. Like, I'm doing it. This is a dream come true. Like, this is it.
Mm-hmm.
And then about, I think it's the 15-mile mark, you hit the Queensboro Bridge, which I don't know how they do it, but it's like 3 times as steep on marathon day than it is any other day. I've driven over it a million times, but like, going over it takes you into 59th Street from Queens to Manhattan, and just when you're cresting it, you're like, this is never ending. And that's when you start to rethink everything you did in training. Like, when am I gonna hit the wall? It wasn't a matter of if I was gonna hit the wall, where just lactic acid takes over, but I knew it was coming. And then you go down the bridge, and then you run up, I forget if it's 1st or 2nd Avenue, whichever one runs one way north, and you just hear this like, and then it gets louder. Like, what is that? Like a plane landing? What is that? And it's the massive crowds that are lining the streets. And then adrenaline carries you for the next 5 miles. And unfortunately, that's when I hit the wall. Like, going up towards Harlem.
Oh, as you were starting to hear the crowds?
Well, after the adrenaline wore off, and like you've heard, a million people tell you, like, you'll hear the crowds, do not speed up, because people get, some of the leaders lose the lead, like the elite runners, they get carried away with, the crowds make them go too fast. So I was really hyper aware of not going too fast. Another thing I was told is put your name, this was before they started printing your name on the number, so just write your name on your singlet, on your tank top. So I did that. So strangers are cheering for you the whole time. And that's the only way I finished. After hitting the wall, coming back down south towards Central Park, I think it was one of the smaller parks that you kind of snake around. I was walking, just drinking Gatorade or whatever it was, and this dude was standing by his statue. He was like, "Come on, Michael, you got this. And I was like, I can't let that guy down. And then I just kept running. There was a lot more walking, but still, like, he actually carried me mentally encouraged me the last 5 miles. I just heard that in my head. Come on, Michael, you got this. And I'm like, he meant that.
Yeah.
So I was like, yeah, I'll do for him. And also my parents and my ex, my wife at the time, were waiting by Central Park. So I'm like, if I don't show up, they're gonna think something horrible happened.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So when you train for a marathon, you don't go up to, what do you go up to is like the last leg of your training? The
longest run I did was about 20 miles. And you do that at a conversational pace. Like, if you're doing, they call it a long, slow distance run, LSD. If you can't carry on a conversation on your LSD, on your long run day, you're going too fast. So I would just lock into like a 9-minute pace, and it would just be so zen, just so relaxing. And knowing that I put in the mileage where I could do that for 20 miles and feel comfortable, and Yeah. When you get to that point, it's like no, it's probably the equivalent of like whatever feeling you get from being in an Indian sweat lodge or doing hot yoga for 3 hours, or
Yep. Yep.
that's a place I want to get back to.
Yeah, that's the best. I think the best I've ever felt after a workout actually is I did jujitsu for a little bit.
Oh, nice.
And it's not my thing for sure. I just wanted to try it and see what it was like. And after that, like you're fighting for your life out there and you're trying to, I never did wrestling or anything like that growing up. And, I just did this for not even a year, like a summer or a season. And after that experience, after a workout or a roll, you feel like, amazing. Adrenaline and
Yeah.
I don't know why, but that and hot yoga too, you feel incredible after.
Yeah, once you get past the first 15 minutes where you can't have any water in hot yoga, then the instructor will be like, okay, take a sip. And then you're like, like you feel loose. Yeah. I mean, a run, it can take like 5 miles to like really get into a good groove on a long run. But once you're there, you're like, oh yeah, this is why I'm doing this.
Yeah. Yeah, I actually, and I've never been a runner either, but I've started to run a little bit this summer, and we've been talking about that a little bit. And once you get comfortable at that 5-6 mile pace, you're like your heartbeat and your body, it feels good at 5-6 miles in. Like you're breathing comfortably, you have the conversational pace going, you feel great. But I don't think I could ever get beyond whatever, like a half marathon probably.
Oh, you could.
I don't know. The body, the knees, the hips.
I speak from experience. I mean, I did New York in 2010, 2011. After 2011, I took a break from running, which turned into, a handful of years where I would run a couple times a year, and that was it. And then I got the crazy idea about 7 years ago to sign up for an ultramarathon. And I blame that on the book that I was reading while I was training for the New York Marathon. Like I was reading the book and listening to the book in the van on tour. And I've been running since I was 5 years old. And it's a book that changed the way I thought about everything I thought I knew about running. It just turned it on its head and reinvigorated my love for running. This was when I was doing those 2 marathons. And I love the book so much. It's a book called Born to Run.
All right,
by Christopher McDougall.
Perfect. Yeah.
Product placement.
There you go.
So it's about this guy who has a running injury and he's trying to figure out what's wrong with his feet, and he goes to a doctor and he tells him, I don't know if it's the doctor that tells him about this tribe of runners, the Tarahumara, that live in Mexico. Somehow through his journey figuring out what's wrong with his foot or his leg or his knee or whatever, that's in the very beginning of the book. He goes on this journey, meets these elite American ultra runners that are trying to learn the secrets of the Tarahumara Indians in Mexico. And these are people that just run for the joy of it. From the time they're little kids, they have games where they run along these trails kicking a ball. And they're just all happy. They're full of joy. I mean, that's one thing I learned going to all these countries in South America. I mean, there are people living in poverty, but they're happy, they're thankful, they're grateful. I mean, that's something that's missing, I think, a lot in American culture, but that's a whole other story. So reading this book, Born to Run, I rediscovered the same joy that I had for just, reckless running when you're a kid. Like if you find whatever it is that propels you forward when you're a kid and you're running and you don't know why, you're just doing it because it feels good. You get that feeling back as an adult with all the responsibilities that you have, all the worries, the fears, whatever's going on politically. I mean, just rediscovering that it's euphoric. And I found that, and that's what helped keep me centered and grounded while touring. All the stress of touring, sometimes lack of sleep. Reading this book, it's something I go back to every year.
What are they called again? The
Tarahumara.
Tarahumara. Like, why? What was their secret? What is their secret to being able to run so far and so freely?
I think part of it is just a healthy diet. I mean, they do eat. A lot of them do eat meat, but they eat a lot of chia seeds, and apparently chia seeds have a perfect balance of fat and protein and carbohydrate in them. So when I signed up and did the 50-mile ultramarathon, I certainly didn't train properly for it, but between aid stations, my girlfriend gave me a water bottle that had like 2 tablespoons of chia seeds in it, and I think that kept me going. And I didn't even have a headache or never got dehydrated because I was constantly drinking fluid. But I think what kept me from bonking was the chia water. So I mean, and also their villages are so far apart, and a lot of them don't have cars. They just run. They run for fun, and they run. At this point, a lot of them were running to get prize money, competing against elite American athletes, and they eventually ended up having a race there that they hosted where they had some of the best ultra runners from around the world competing against these, the Tarahumara, and seeing like who is the ultimate ultra runner. And in this book, you're introduced to at the time, one of the top American ultra marathon runners, this guy Scott Jurek, who has written a book called Eat and Run, and it's about his life as a vegan ultra runner. And that book inspired me even further. And so he has another book that just came out a few years ago about the time he broke the world's record for running from the south end of the Appalachian Trail to the north end. And I think that book is actually called North, or Going North, something like that.
Yep. I've heard of that.
Yeah.
I think it is North.
North, yeah. So, I mean, just having the pleasure of meeting him at a book event that was not far from Central Park. So before the book signing that Scott Jurek had, there was a run around a reservoir at Central Park, and there was maybe 75 people that participated in that. And throughout the run, Scott spent time with everyone. He started at the back and ran like person by person or couple by couple, ran and talked with everyone. So that inspired me even further to keep running. But yeah, I got to start again.
Do these people, do they run barefoot or do they run with shoes on?
The Tarahumara, they don't run barefoot. They run in sandals that are made from used car tires. So they're very thin, or they have it a little thicker if they want a little more padding. And I think that was part of what inspired Vibram, however you say it, to do the barefoot style, the individual toe shoe.
Because I've heard that's good for your feet when you're running. I mean, maybe not on the roads, but on like a lighter surface, on a softer surface. Barefoot.
What barefoot running or running with a minimalist shoe, which is something with like very little support, it gets you to not run with your heel first. It gets you to strike with your forefoot, which is how we naturally run. Like before companies like Nike started making running shoes where they put all that cushioning in the heel, that's when we became heel strikers, because the heel is so thick and so cushioned, we land on our heels. But before that, I mean, if you look back at runners like Roger Bannister, the first runner to break the 4-minute mile barrier, they're forefoot strikers, or even like elite runners, they hit their forefoot first. So some people think that if you run like that, your biomechanics are more natural. You can run further, longer. So yeah, I tried a pair of Vibrams after reading Born to Run, and the book doesn't preach one way or the other, and say, it says find what works for you. So the Vibrams did not work for me, and I went the other way. And now when I run, I wear Hokas, which have like the thickest heel, the more cushioning than you could ever need. But that's what I did my marathons in. That's what I did the 50-miler in, was Hoka.
I was going to say, I think I need to invest in some Hokas, because I see those things around and they just look so comfortable.
Yeah, I mean, you were talking about different knee or leg problems. Like I had knee issues, shin splints, Achilles issues. Like when I switched to Hoka, knock on wood, everything's been fine.
Yeah. I mean, I'm fine. I run long distance, not super long distance, but I go on runs pretty often. I just think in college playing lacrosse, I did so much cutting.
Yeah.
So my knees and my hips, I mean, I think I just need to continue to do yoga and stretch and just keep the body flexible. But
yeah,
sometimes the pounding on the hard surface affects me a little bit, and I get, knees and hip but that's pretty common if you're a runner, right?
Yeah, I mean, running on tarmac or concrete, I mean, it's the worst thing for you. And that's another thing, another reason why I'm really glad that we moved here. Is there's trails everywhere. So in Hampden, I'm like a 5-minute run from some trails that I will be hitting soon, I promise. I mean, I just started assisting the assistant coaches for the cross-country team.
Nice.
So I'm excited about that, and I look forward to being in enough shape to run with, maybe the back of the JV pack and some short, easy runs.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right, so another question about Born to Run is, because I've heard of this book, I've read not all of it, but a lot of it, and one of the figures they talk about a lot is Caballo Blanco. And I never actually found out who he is or what he's all about because he's kind of a mysterious figure.
Yeah, I don't want to give too much away about him, but he's kind of one of the heroes in the book, and he had a really interesting life. And he started out as a boxer, like getting paid to fight people. I mean, I'm explaining what a boxer is. We'll fix this in post, right? Anyway, so he was paid he wasn't a pro fighter, but he made a living because I guess people really he had a specific style that people liked, and he had maybe like a rough life, and then just disappeared into the mountains of Mexico and was running and befriended the Tarahumara, and he's like a ghost figure to a lot of people because he would just have this long hair, and people would talk about the white, the white horse.
The white horse.
The white horse, yeah. And he was this legend. So when Christopher McDougall, the author of Born to Run, when he's looking for him, like he's wondering if he really exists or not. And then he meets him and hears his life story. And it's incredible. And it's a guy who just runs because he loves it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's another person that reminded me of what was the original joy of running. It was just sometimes just the act of doing it. I mean, not even going for a run to like cheer yourself up or like solve a problem, just doing it. Just hear. I don't run with earbuds. I want to hear everything that's going on, whether it's a car that doesn't see me or just nature or just the crunch of a trail under my feet or just my breathing, just being fully aware. It's like a whole Zen mind thing. So someone like Caballo Blanco, his name was Mika True.
Yep.
Just inspiring. I mean, just it's so the things that can make anyone happy are so fundamentally basic, and we're so distracted by just everything. I mean, just the phone in my pocket is probably the most evil device you could have, but there it is, and there I am on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, emails. I mean, sometimes unnecessary, like the Gilman email, of course, but just the basic joy that you can get from doing something as simple as running is I wish more people could find that in whatever they're doing.
Yeah.
Whether it's teaching a class or playing football or I don't know, going to school, just find that joy, that basic fundamental joy, and that's Born to Run brought that back to my life with running.
Yeah, it just makes you recognize or see what's pretty obvious and basic and simple. And I think, I kind of got into running this summer, and I realized that because growing up and playing sports, everything's so competitive and you're always trying to get an edge. And especially in college, playing lacrosse is like you can never really take a break in terms of and just enjoy the love of the game because it's always like, I've got to do this to beat this guy out and you got to keep getting better. And it sometimes felt like a chore. And so I think I looked at running a little bit as like, all right, I've got to hit this mile marker and I've got to get this time. And that's maybe why I didn't want to run or like running. And I realized that just going for a run and breaking a sweat is enough. Like you don't have to do too much. You don't have to get all the stats down and measure everything. You can if you want, but just getting outside and enjoying it and feeling good is what it's about.
I mean, that's the beauty of it. And then if you do want to take it to another level or another place, you can, run a certain distance on a certain path or around a track, and just you're competing against yourself. Even if you're in a race and there are age group awards or whatever, like even if you don't place, like you could still say like, all right, how did I do on this day based on how I was feeling? What did I eat the day before? Like all these things come into play. But if you do want to get down to the, just competing for fun, I mean, you're always competing against yourself. And then like when you go from 49 to 50, like when you're at 50, you're like, okay, what can I do now? And then like whatever you do, it's going to be the fastest you've run at the age of 50. And then you can just mark yourself against that, or let me see if I could run as fast as I did 10 years ago. Or, I mean, for me, it's always going to be like, can I beat that half marathon time from ninth grade? And I've come close, but again, it's just all fun.
Yeah. And it's all about yourself, and you don't have to compare yourself to other people too much. And when you say that when you run, there's a Zen-like component mentally, like, can you describe little bit about like the mental benefits of running for you?
It's things that seem like a huge problem that are within your control seem to be less of a problem, or even not a problem. I mean, there are things beyond our control that happen that maybe the problem isn't eliminated, but just your way of thinking about it is so much more relaxed. Because like physically your body is happier, you're healthier, but when you're running and you get into that groove, just everything seems a little more manageable. Like you might think of a solution for something that you otherwise wouldn't have. It's almost, I mean, I've never done sensory deprivation, but it does seem like a lot of the outside world, all the distractions are gone. I mean, especially if you're running on a trail, if it's not too technical, or even if it is, you're so focused on not tripping over something. And then if those thoughts come in, you can just handle them. Like if there's a problem or someone at work that's annoying you, or whatever it may be, or there's a health issue or a loved one that something's wrong, you could just think, all right, you'll do what you can. You'll do the best you can. And on that run, you're doing the best you can, whatever your goal is for that day. If it's an easy run, then you're just running easy. If you're accomplishing that, then you're free to think about everything else in such a calm and peaceful manner without distraction.
Yeah.
Just thoughts flow, it's easier.
Breaks up some of the fog and the distractions.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Do you like to run in the morning, in the afternoon, in a certain time every single day, or is it just whenever you can get one in?
I mean, I did prefer the morning, but it's going to be afternoons now. Being here, it's at 7:30. I think it's going to be an afternoon endeavor. Maybe on the weekends, it'll be in the morning.
Yeah.
Hit the trail before, all the other trail folk are out there.
Yeah. Yeah, that's my thing. I like to try to exercise when I'm completely by myself. Like I like going into the weight room here when no one else is really there, even though it's for sure large enough to fit everyone. It's an amazing new place on campus, but I like the alone time. I like having my own space. But yeah, some people like to exercise in the morning first thing. Some people like to wait till their body's woken up a little bit. I guess it's just different.
Yeah, I like some of my favorite runs would be, first thing in the morning, maybe even before the sun comes up. And like just as the sun is coming up, you're still waking up, and it's like you feel like everything's, like blooming at once.
Yeah,
it's
natural.
Yeah.
It seems like a lot of what you enjoy doing, whether it's reading or playing the drums or running, is like there's a mental component or a freeing aspect mentally.
Yeah.
And you said that gardening is something that you're also pretty passionate about.
Oh, I love it.
How did you kind of first get into gardening, and what is gardening? What role does gardening serve in your life?
I always help my mom plant annual plants. This confounds me to this day. Why plants that do not come back every year are called annuals, and the ones that come back every year are perennial. I don't know the Latin origin of perennial, but annual, doesn't that sound like something that's a yearly thing? Annual.
Annual is yearly.
Like there's an annual sale. It's going to happen again next year. Annual plant, not happening next year. You got to do it again. So yeah, my mom got me into gardening. Would always plant. All she ever wanted for Mother's Day was to go plant shopping with me and plant them in front of the house. So I did that, and I think it was growing pumpkins and sunflowers in my 20s that really became exciting. Like just watching something insanely giant grow, or just even the little pumpkins or little sunflowers. And then I got into all the different varieties. And growing potatoes was a lot of fun. Growing anything that you grow and you eat is always going to taste better. You know where it came from. And then I got into succulent plants. Those are like cactus-like plants that don't require a lot of water. And so you can kind of leave them alone for a bit and they do their own thing. So just gardening, it's very relaxing. I never had like a bonsai tree or anything like that. I mean, I remember seeing people work with bonsai trees, particularly in a Karate Kid, where Danielson, Mr. Miyagi teaches them how to trim a bonsai tree. I always thought that would be really cool, but I never did that. But I guess I've been doing that on a larger scale, and I find it very relaxing. Even just weeding a garden, just pulling out the things that are getting in your way. It's like clearing your mind, but clearing the ground, and it's very relaxing. And just knowing that you cared for something, you nurtured something. I don't have any children, and I'm sure parents feel that way to the nth degree. What I experience with the garden, they feel with their children, whether But yeah, there's a lot of weird analogies there. Anyways, just planting a seed and watching something grow is incredible.
Yeah. I think also I watched this guy, he has a bunch of YouTube videos, Jordan Peterson, and he always says that when like a lot of things are going on in your life and in your world, the first thing you could do to make yourself feel better is clean your room and make your room spotless. And, if you can take care of that, then you can go out and solve all the other issues out there. And what you're talking about with gardening, I've never really been a gardener. I just moved on campus here at Gilman, and there's a little garden in the back, so I think we're going to have to chat some more about what I can do back there.
Oh, absolutely.
But I feel like having a garden is the same idea as if you can like actually manage and control this area and, this manageable area.
Yeah.
Then you're at a peace of mind to go out and figure out all the other more complicated things out there.
Yeah. I mean, it's like anything in life. The more you practice something, it eventually becomes a habit. So it's something that you just do. Like drumming for me, like I practiced for years and years and years. I could go and play with someone right now. I could play with a band I've never rehearsed with before, but if I even remotely know the song, I can just play it without worrying it. It's just natural because I've practiced enough that it just becomes, a habit, just a natural way of doing something. It's like breathing. You're not thinking inhale, exhale, and it just, I guess it's not a habit. I guess it's not something you have to, well, you can practice mindful breathing. Mm-hmm. Gardening, cleaning your room. I mean, it's all, you do that with the rest of your life, you're in good shape.
Yeah. It's like second nature almost when you figure out all those, those parts of your life. I just think it's interesting for you that, I'm sure like drumming is stress relieving and it makes you feel good at the end of a long day. And, running is the same thing. And so is gardening. It's like just a way to clear your mind and like boost your spirit, which I think is, I feel like you have to have outlets like that in life.
Yeah, and even if it's not like a physically demanding activity, just something that you're in control of to some extent, or that you can, like a garden, like, if a fungus comes along or like little mites or something, there are things that you can do to mitigate that, but for the most part, you're running the show, mm-hmm. and it's I think it's healthy. It's good for your mind. I mean, what you said about the room, until I was out of school, I guess my room was always a mess. So it's funny that you mentioned that, and that like if you're waking up to that and going to sleep to that, it's the first and last thing you see is clutter. Then your head's going to be all over the place. But I don't know. They also say a cluttered desk is a sign of a genius, or I have a lot of thoughts on all of that. But yeah, gardening, running, drumming, to me, they're all connected. So when I went from being a touring punk rock drummer doing, part-time actor, whatever, to library school. So many people would scratch their head and be like, kind of sarcastically say like, oh yeah, that's a logical leap. And like, it really becoming a librarian, it really is a logical step, because it's just more, it's putting everything I've done in my life into practice and sharing it with other people, and just continue on a journey of learning. I can still, travel, take vacations, still run. I started racing BMX again about 7 years ago, which was something I did when I was a kid, and I stopped doing because I couldn't have the explosive speed to compete in BMX and run cross country. So fortunately I chose cross country, because that was, again, something, my coach, he was a huge influence on me in high school. So that all ties into working at Gilman, where they have the teacher coach model. That's something that was the biggest inspiration, for 4 years of my life. It was a math teacher who was also the cross country and track coach. So I feel like I've come full circle.
Mm-hmm.
Like, just following, not Bill Moyers, Joseph Campbell said, follow your bliss.
Mm-hmm.
So he was, he wrote The Power of Myth and The Hero Wears 1,000 Masks or 1,000 Faces. I am lacking caffeine, so my brain doesn't always work. But follow your bliss. I mean, that's what I've been doing, and I end up here where, I interview with a handful of people, and everyone from, the information and innovation person, Ty, up to Henry, the head of the school, all talking about the teacher coach model, all talking about making, producing productive members of society, not people who are going to be, Super Bowl champions or the head of IBM or whatever, just like producing like fundamentally decent human beings, was something that I connected with that goes back to high school. So going from being a touring drummer, learning about different cultures around the world, to wanting to be an archivist, working in a public library, then working in a school, which I never thought I would end up in school. Anyway, so like here I am, it's all connected.
Yeah, and it allows you to, have your afternoons and the summers and the breaks to do the things that you like to do on your own, which I really like about Gilman, is that I have a lot of things that I like outside of English and teaching and even this podcast that, it's like an avenue to explore and do certain things that maybe if I was working, in a bank or wherever, I wouldn't even have the chance or the time to do.
It would be a little tougher.
It'd be tough, So that's the beauty of it.
Yeah.
But Michael, thank you very much for coming on the podcast today.
Well, thank you for having me.
I think we covered a lot. I love the book choice, because I'm glad we could. I didn't finish reading that book, but I'd like to return to it, and maybe it will inspire me to run a little bit more than I'm running right now. But like we said, it's all about just getting out there. But thank you very much for coming on, and look forward to seeing you in the library.
For sure. Thank you.
Of course.